How about it?
No.
100. Happy anniversary, Nicola. And wow, we made it. What about that?
I know. Happy anniversary, Jason. Thank you for all your hard work. I really appreciate you.
Well, likewise. Thanks very much. It is a labour of love, and that means that it's not always rosy, and that's the best part of what you do here is that through adversity comes growth. And the best form of growth, and 100 shows in our first year is a massive, massive achievement for anyone who notices what goes into creating a program, a news current affair discussion show, if you will, getting the best possible information sources and putting it together. So thank you, Nicola, and thanks for our audience for participating and coming along for the ride. And I know that there are people who've been watching, who are watching every single show, and thank you. And a clap for our century together. There it is, raising the bat for us and our audience for supporting us. For any cricket nut out there, you know exactly what that means. It also means that any cricket nut will know that means we're going for our 200 now.
Well, I don't know anything about cricket. I like watching cricket as a Brit. I grew up, we had a cricket green in our village, and we used to go and drink champagne and eat strawberries, drop them into the bottom of the champagne and watch the cricketers. And it was just beautiful. It's a beautiful sight. I think what's important about this show is that, yes, we're discussing what we're told is news across the board, but we're actually exposing a lot of who we are as people. And there's risk associated with that. And there's life-changing effects that are associated with that. But we do it. Why? Because we love this country and we love the people of this country. And that's why we do this for you every single day.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It is so true. You know, interestingly, yesterday, someone sent me a message and said, "Did you just send me a friend request on Facebook?" I said, "No." So I asked them to send me a screenshot. So there's somebody using my picture to set up their own profile. So I got in there, reported the profile, and got a message a minute later from Facebook saying, "Oh, no, we're not taking it down. We understand that you may be upset about our community standards, but no, we're keeping the fake guy up there." I thought, you are kidding yourself. Facebook is an absolute criminal rogue organization. There's no other way to describe them. They will allow, and we know this by that story the other day from that fellow that was setting up child exploitation material on Telegram and Facebook. So they allow that, no problem.
Yeah.
Mention something about a medicine, you're gone for life. And if you have two profiles, they take you down. But anyone else can have a fraud profile that affects their enemy, and they let them go. Facebook also robbed me for $600 one time, and I proved it was them. I had to go to the police. I got my money back instantly from the bank. So what had happened was somebody was using my credit card that was attached when I was trying to run ads in a political campaign years ago, and they tapped into my credit card, and they were buying ads for a restaurant in Vietnam. And what they did was they started with $5, then it worked, then they went to $20, then it worked, then they went to $100, and then they went up to $500, and it all happened within a couple of hours. But what I was able to do was to actually track the each of the steps of the ads that were purchased, and it was actually linked. It said it linked it to a person working on staff at Facebook. It literally had their details there.
You are a worthy adversary for Meta AI, Jason. And by the way, when people copy you, it's the most sincere form of flattery. There's someone kind of copying our show going daily. And if you think that you've got problems with fake accounts copying you, go onto X and just type in the White Rabbit podcast. There are literally hundreds, Jason, but luckily I'm the only one with the blue tick, so they won't be getting away with it. But it is a form of flattery, I think.
Well, there you go. I've made it. It only took 100 shows on the Daily Australian, and I finally got my impersonators using my photo. It was one thing to use my name without a photo, but the crazy thing was this lunatic sent me a friend request. So unbelievable, isn't it? It really
your
is.
Sideways. Your head's like that in the fake account, which is really odd. I don't know what that means.
Do you know what I just realized? In that photograph, they're talking about Restaurant Week. Like there's, they put a picture of them.
It's the same people. It's the same people.
Well, there you go. Now, call me a conspiracy theorist, but therefore, if I was in police intelligence and this actually mattered to someone, I would now say, well, that is a coincidence and that is worth checking out. So isn't that odd that would be the case? So you would assume, therefore, wouldn't that be something if we could go down the pathway, find evidence to suggest and then prove that it was an operation from within, it could well turn out that all trolls that are created from within Meta. And that might be grounds to take these bastards to the cleaners, or at least to court somewhere along the line. Yeah. Well, if it's the AI, I argue that it's an individual working in there.
Really?
Well, that was it had to be an individual that got into my credit card and decided to do that.
Well, they had success with you before, Jason. So I would hazard a guess that unbeknownst to you, you're quite famous in Vietnam, and they're like, this guy in Australia, this is how we make money. I was very famous in the smallest country in the world, Luxembourg. I won Best Actress in Luxembourg, and I never got the award, Jason, and it would have been the only one I've ever won.
That's so funny. I have a friend, and I'll say his name because he's a good mate of mine. He's a terrific singer. His name's Grant Galea, and for many years, Grant used to do a Dean Martin show, and he did a Dean and Jerry show, and he was on the midday show a couple of times, and then he did Good Morning Australia. And he tells the story that when he was on Good Morning Australia, he sings in front of Bert Newton. And at the end of the song, that everyone was very impressed in front of the audience. And Bert gave him a big clap and said, "Come over and have a chat." You know how they used to do it. And then as he said something, Grant says to him, "Oh, that's right." Bert said, "Oh, I remember you from somewhere." He says, "Yes, I was on New Faces. I came second." And Grant says to him, "And you gave me this watch, and it never worked." Which was quite hilarious to say that on air. And then Bert Newton said, "And after that show, neither did I." And it was the perfect comeback at the time. I just thought it was very funny. So if Grant, if you're watching this.
Bert Newton's full of it. There's a clip of me, if you put in Nicola Charles on Bert Newton into YouTube. Those YouTubes are allowed, just not my YouTube. Bert Newton was looking through an FHM magazine that I was on the cover of, and there was lots of pictures inside. And I changed my hairstyle, and I had bangs, a fringe. And I said, and as he was looking through the reasonably half naked pictures, I said to him, "Of course, I look a bit different because that was before the fringe." And he said, "Oh, who's looking at the fringe?" He's
well, of
very
course,
cheeky, Bert.
Well, very, but very, very fast. And I think that's what people appreciate was just that quick-wittedness. But of course, when we were on TNT radio together and I read out your bio, I remember I said, once voted second sexiest woman alive on FHM magazine. And that's why we're on radio. And it was the kiss of death at that point, wasn't it? What was the point of that?
Oh God! Well, I am 55. I'd literally reached a point in my life, Jason, where I'd retired myself from television. Even though as an actress, it's nice to sort of get old and still have that job, and I'd love to perform again. I was looking forward to retiring myself onto radio, and then it was only through sheer outrage that Spotify deplatformed me, and I was like, "Sod it! I'm going to do what all these other people do and put my face out there and see if it works," and it did. So yay, here we are, 4 years later.
There you go. Well, a combined force. It's been a long time in front of the camera and fighting the establishment. But I tell you what, today we're at 100, and I have got more good news than bad news today. It's going to be a terrific show, and it is the start of. As I say, we now build towards 200, and who knows? The sky's the limit from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the crawl down the bottom. It's only a short one today because that makes it official that the news program has started. There you go. And what I'd like to do, Nicola, to kick us off is some really good news. I'm going to play your video now, and then we'll come back and to talk about it. But let me find it for you. It is hiding right here as the number one clip. Take a look at this.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. J. Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science. There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
So that's about as official as you can get. Now, it's not everything, but geez, that's a good start.
I'll tell you, Jason, for me as a mum, if that's the only thing that RFK Jr. did in 4 years in the Trump administration, I'd be happy with that. I'd like to see it extended, obviously, but it's fantastic news because I think we all aged prematurely, emotionally, and physically during this time in history because we were so afraid for our children, obviously for ourselves as well, but children and pregnant women. It was extraordinary that you would announce a medical experiment and include those groups. So I thank him for that, and I take my hat off to him for that, and I just hope that common sense prevails moving forward in healthcare.
You know, he has gone from strength to strength, Kennedy, in the last few weeks, and after all the abuse that he copped. I mentioned it to some of my friends in the US just at the weekend. I don't know about you, but if Trump was to replace himself in 2028, I really think RFK Jr., when the economic setup is now in place and he sees the benefits, I really like him for president number 48. With Vance doing another 4 years as VP. Yeah. What a way to bring the world together, a former Democrat to become a Republican president and a Kennedy. That just blows my mind. It sends shivers down my spine as I think about it. It's just incredible to think that could well be a possibility.
Next question is, how do we get visas for America? I'm out of here.
Well, it's very easy. You become the 51st state. You know, and it's interesting. King Charles today was out in Canada and he was having a go at Trump and talking about not being the 51st state. And it's just funny how, you know, the opposite seems to be holding everywhere. Now,
are you kidding that he's trying to grab this back now, King Charles III, after literally hanging us out to dry through this period in history? He hung us out to dry. All Commonwealth constitutions have been ignored. All of our rights have been ignored. It's extraordinary. And he's over there saying, oh, no, you can't be the 51st state. Dude, if you're going to step up, step up. We're here. Hello. This is us in Australia.
Yeah, look, it's extraordinary. I do have a headline that I want to bring to you, but I'm going to give you this one right now. This is the story today that's coming out of the Murdoch Press. So, strong and free, Charles sends a message to Trump in Canada's speech, using a historic speech at the opening of Canada's parliament to stress proud independence amid Donald Trump's repeated threats to take control of his northern neighbour, and makes reference there, threats to make Canada the 51st state. I don't know if it's a threat. I think it's the opposite of a threat, but that's the point there. Yeah.
Strong and free. They cancelled their bank accounts for peacefully protesting. They cancelled the bank accounts of people who donated to the Freedom Truckers. Strong and free, strong and freedom truckers? I don't think so, King Charles III. You know what? You dropped the ball a long time ago. I don't know if you were paid to, or you wanted to, or you were too busy looking the other way. But if you're going to come in and say that you're going to protect a country, then protect a country.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just absolutely extraordinary. Look, I have got another headline that I've just misplaced. It's a brilliant one. And basically, what we're dealing with now is actually, what am I saying? I've just found it. It's right in front of me. Check this out. How's this for some good news? Now, it is dated 3 weeks ago. We've missed it. Florida Governor DeSantis to ban weather modification and track chemtrail complaints. How about that? So on our 100th anniversary, we've now got COVID jabs taken down in the US for healthy kids and healthy pregnant women. I don't know if you can be an unhealthy pregnant woman. And so it's odd that they're using that language. Whether or not, how you would define that to determine whether there's going to be a recommendation that you take said COVID jab, that just doesn't quite make sense to me. But the second piece of good news there, that Florida to ban chemtrails. And of course, they call it a conspiracy even in USA Today. But This is the governor doing it. Now, the other interesting big good news story, which I'm going to play for you now, this is very interesting. Let me play you the report, then I'll give you a bit more, another short clip from the governor himself. But check this one out.
The state is moving forward with plans to make gold and silver coins legal money. Governor Ron DeSantis just hours ago signed a bill making the coins legal tender. This legislation allows but does not require their use for payments, including taxes and fees. Government entities that opt into accepting these coins must do so electronically and partner with licensed financial institutions. The bill also exempts gold and silver coins from sales tax. By the way, this also bans the use of any central bank digital currency as legal tender in Florida, whether issued by the feds or a foreign government. All of this is going to be in place by July 1st of next year.
The last bit of that story was the most interesting. Also bans central bank digital currency, because I actually saw a report this morning that said all of our countries, well, 100 countries, are going to have CBDCs by 2030. But it's pretty fantastic for those of us who invested in gold and silver. This could be a very good thing, Jason. You know, it's real, it's there, you know, and it's not infinite gold and silver. There's an amount of gold and silver on this planet, and that's your lot.
Which is interesting because today Trump's also come out and said that they're going to create a $250 billion Bitcoin treasury. So Bitcoin itself is limited, it's finite, but so then the value has to go up if it becomes more popular. But it's still not physical, is it? It's invisible and it's invented as opposed to something physical. But interestingly, the price of silver is about 1,800 Australian dollars a kilogram. You're probably paying $60 a coin for a 1 ounce coin, give or take a few dollars there. And gold has dropped back. I quoted in per kilo mainly because that's what people purchase if they can for their super, etc., and private investments. But gold hit, I think, $175,000 a kilo. It's back under $165,000 a kilo. It means that per ounce it's under $5,000 an ounce, which is a coin. But when you think you can pay for one coin $5,000 for a gold coin and $60 for a silver coin, both have to be found, they both have to be mined, they both have to be processed and refined and printed, or like when I say pressed, and distributed and retailed. How you can do one for $60 a coin and the other for 5,000 when they were once on parity.
Silver's been kept unnaturally low. I think it's about to skyrocket. But she also said no sales tax, Jason.
Yes,
so
on those coins, yes.
It's like a two-tier monetary system. That's incredible.
Well, you don't pay GST on bullion, which is also interesting as well. So here in Australia, so if you're out there and you're thinking that you know, you've got some dollars or your tax returns coming up, and you're thinking about, you know, what do I do? Do I spend it? Do I pay bills off, or do I invest it in silver? I know many people generally when they get a tax return, they go out and make some sort of investment in bullion and just keep building. It's just an interesting way of doing it in ways. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Meanwhile, and I know we're going a little bit out of sequence today, but I just want to present what I would call good news up front. It is the 100th. Donald Trump's approval rating hits a new high. 50% of voters say America is on the right track. That's supported by another particular graphic I'm going to place up here for you now. US consumer confidence has, well, the experts got it wrong. Not exactly man bites dog these days. Actual consumer confidence has risen to a figure of 98 against a forecast of 87. So that's a double-digit increase. That's higher. So therefore, isn't it funny when the economy is genuinely booming, people start to change their minds? It is all about making a difference.
Well, yeah. And we don't have that in Australia because I am not, my confidence is not returned. I would say I am not a consumer. I would say, like everyone else, I'm having to be very considered about every dollar that is spent. And it's a shame because this country is so rich in so many resources that the sheer privilege, let's say, of living in Australia, which now a vast amount of people do have, should mean that life is good. And of course, life is very hard in Australia. I mean, food pricing for a start has to change, especially as the quality of that food is not that great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you notice it first in fruit and veg, and especially if you're buying it from, big chains, and you bring it home and you put it in the fridge, and 2 days later it's rotten. And it doesn't make any sense. And we've talked about this before when we go out to down the Central Coast to the farm. We'll buy fruit and veg, and 3 weeks later in the fridge, it's still perfect.
It's the
And how
logistics. I think that's the logistics, because they take such a long time to truck it from. And of course, it's so weird. So today, go to any deli in any supermarket, and people don't really look at this. What do you look at when you go to the deli? I'm getting my mom on now. What you look at, let's say you're looking at some ham, right? Some shaved ham. You're looking at the price per kilo. What's that going to cost me for a big handful so I can make sandwiches for the kids for school? But what you don't look at, and you need to, is if you crouch down, because they make sure that the writing is really tiny, it usually says made from 30% Australian ingredients. So it's like it's ham. So how can it only be 30% Australian ingredients, which means that 70% of it came from somewhere else, and it would have taken a long time to come from that somewhere else. And so things tend to be sort of old already by the time they serve them up to you.
Oh, yeah, indeed. And it's similar too when it comes to sort of other foodstuffs, right? So, for example, prawns from Australia are certainly different to the ones that are imported. Like they're a different quality. And so there was a time there when I was having some horrible pain from gout, and I went and saw my GP, and he spoke to me about it, and he said, "Well, what did you eat?" We went through different things, and he said, "And where did you eat the prawns?" And I said, "Oh, they were at a restaurant." And he was a little Vietnamese man, and he said, "I'm going to tell you something now. When I eat," he said, "prawns from a restaurant, I'll get the gout. But if I eat fresh prawns knowing where they come from, I don't get them." And what he said was that they are imported prawns. They are a different quality. And so when I stopped doing that, I didn't get it anymore. It's interesting.
Well, apparently
And
all our good seafood, the wild caught stuff, and
correct.
all of our good honey apparently gets sent to China. Like, that's an absolute fact. And what happens with some of Australian honey is the really good quality stuff gets sent to China. They remix it with a crap or I don't know how they do it, a very low grade honey, repackage it, and then send it back to Australia as high grade honey. But it's only got a little bit of the good honey in it. We're getting ripped off left, right, and center. Wouldn't it be nice if we had like an equivalent of the FDA that actually did their job properly? Because we always think of the FDA and it's the Food and Drug Administration. So it's been drugs lately. But that take care of the food, the quality of the food in Australia. I can tell you now, when I came here in the early 90s, and I had lived and worked all over the world, Spain and America and all over, Bahrain, like some crazy countries I'd lived and worked, Greece and Germany. Coming to Australia, this was the best food I'd ever eaten anywhere on the planet. Now that's all gone. Even if you go to an expensive, say for instance, lobster restaurant, if you're into that, which I do like lobster, even if you go to the best restaurants that cost an awful lot of money, the quality of that food has gone really downhill. I just don't go anymore. I find the best way to eat nice food is to shop simply, shop organic, non-GMO if you can, and cook at home.
Yeah, indeed. And there are many that will also advocate for shopping local, so that local bacteria in your food matches where you are. So that's an interesting one, isn't it?
Particularly honey. Very good pickup, Jason. You're absolutely right. If you're someone that suffers from allergies, you need to eat locally grown honey and locally grown food. Why? Because it essentially inoculates you against any allergies to what's going on locally. That's why when I first moved to Australia, I was allergic to everything. And people said, oh, it's because, you remember when the rego plates here, Jason, said the Garden State? And they said, oh, it's because there's so many flowers in Victoria. That's why you've got allergies. That's literally what a GP said to me. And then a very smart holistic lady said, start eating honey and foods from Victoria and you'll fix. I was fixed like that within 2 weeks, Jason.
So true, because the opposite holds. When I remember we went overseas 13 years ago to New York, and I got a particular, sort of a mouth ulcer. I thought, that's very unusual, and went to the pharmacy, and they had a particular medication that fixed it in 2 days. But it was for something that I'd never heard of before. But I never got it ever again, and I only got it that one time in New York. And you would just assume that it would be from local produce that would set you off some form of allergy. Very, very interesting, is that the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, for instance. But something like that. It's a big deal. Now, there is more good news. There's a lot of difficult news that we'll talk about too, but and some interesting developments in Russia, and I want to get to that a little bit later in the show. But I'd like to continue now, because the other story that I want to put up, and we're dealing with graphics and videos here. I'm just going to show you this graphic's terrific for those that have been following along. Check this one out. DOGE Social Security officially removes 12.3 million individuals listed at age 120 plus. 12.3 million people, and let's assume that they reach, let's say they get $10,000 each, mysteriously just disappears. That is, we're talking billions of dollars there, probably $120 billion that's saved the taxpayer.
It's so wrong. It's so wrong, that stuff. Yeah. It's
extraordinary. There was a picture, I haven't got it to show, but there was a picture yesterday of 4 women who were all arrested for coupon fraud in the United States. Coupon fraud. Yeah, and you just look at it and you think, are you serious? Like, how entitled can you be to think that you need to defraud the coupon system? Just extraordinary.
Well, I think America really went back to the Wild West under the Biden administration. That's what happened. And so people learned how to game the system, right? And as soon as people know how to game the system, they're going to game the system. And, they'd need to look out. They'd need to rejig their thinking and their lives, right, to become more self-sufficient, because this AI supercomputer, which is going to be up and running by 2026 in Texas, called Stargate, which is essentially like Skynet, it's going to know everything you're doing, including your coupon fraud, everything about taxation, everything about everything, right? So essentially, these new AI systems are a sort of police system, I feel. And so you might as well rejig your lives now, because that gravy train is probably going to come to an end.
Yeah, indeed. Now, let me just put this one here for you. This is a story that's popped up in the Sydney Morning Herald this morning. 100% disappointed, furious. Nationals MP says that David Littleproud misled the party. So Queensland Nationals MP Colin Boyce has unloaded on David Littleproud, refusing to support his leadership and saying he misled colleagues over the scope of demands made during the split with the Liberals. In comments that increase the chances of a leadership spill when Parliament returns in late July. He was 100% disappointed, furious, in fact, about how the split played out. And what was really interesting about that was the fact that Matt Canavan appeared on the Today Show this morning and deflected very nicely questions about whether he would challenge the leadership by effectively saying, well, basically, I support the leader, and the leader's done a good job. And when Carl stressed, well, would you rule it out? And of course he says, well, I'm not going to, all the usual suspects. So it's looking very much like
a politician misleading, Jason. Shock horror, like headline news.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do find it interesting, but for mine, it looks like Matt Canavan at some stage will become the leader of that party if that party wants to move in the direction that it knows it needs to for its own electoral survival, and whether or not it will then lead in this sort of split, or whether they come back together as a coalition. I just find that fascinating. Now, in other political news, this is very disturbing. I'm going to put his actually, I'll put the headline up first for you. So, a sexual assault trial for Kiama MP Gareth Ward has begun. He's a New South Wales MP. He's fighting historic sexual abuse allegations relating to 2 men, with the court told he invited one over after a Parliament event before allegedly raping him. This is Gareth Ward here, the MP for Kiama, still sitting member, by the way. I'm going to read you some information now from the particular story. Just going to take it up here. So, distressing details of how Gareth Ward allegedly sexually abused these two men. The 43-year-old arrived at the Downing Centre Court on Tuesday sporting a navy blue suit and a Cobra hat. He was charged in March of 2022 with 3 counts of assault with an act of indecency and alternative charge of common assault against an 18-year-old man at his Maru Meadow home in Shoalhaven in February of 2013, and intercourse without consent against a 24-year-old man at his apartment in Potts Point in September of 2015. It's a 4-week-long trial, was impanelled Tuesday. The jury was. Crown Prosecutor Monica Knowles told the court in her opening address she alleges Mr. Ward indecently assaulted a man who just turned 18 at his home in the South Coast in February of 2013. And it goes on there in some detail in this particular article if people want to check it out about what's going on there.
I don't think he should lose his job for allegations, but I do feel like he should be suspended until this court case is over, because I do still believe that we should all be existing under innocent until proven guilty. And I do worry that when the media gets involved, it is guilty until you prove yourself innocent. Then, of course, if you are found to be guilty, you lose the lot. That's how it goes for my mind. But I'm old school. You know, I come from a world where it is innocent until proven guilty, but it seems to be shifting in society, Jason.
Well, it certainly does. And then you have the position of where you're meant to be held to a higher standard. And so if you don't provide that at the parliamentary level, if the MP is still allowed to be the MP and represent the community, let's say, for example, and we're just speculating at this point, let's say he's found guilty and he's sentenced to a term in prison. Well, obviously, you immediately he can't be the MP, of course, and then you go to a by-election. Would the Liberal Party at the state level would they be planning for this, or would they be in denial? You'd have to accept that publicly they'd be in denial, but privately they would be planning for a by-election, right?
Yes, I would imagine so. Yeah.
Very disturbing. And look, I know people
hope for the best and plan for the worst, right?
Yeah, exactly. Look, I know people that know Gareth Ward personally, and were shocked by the allegations there. So it just shows you that that these things that go on behind closed doors are quite scary, just the same. So we'll see what plays out there. Meanwhile, and I know, we have to talk about it, but once we are talking about it, you do find it very disturbing. So people who aren't understanding what we understand about these subjects, I can't imagine how they feel and why they are in total denial. But this is another development in the Diddy trial. So the picture on the screen is from a particular musician, so it's not related to the headline, but Sean Combs' trial. He kidnapped me, shocked Diddy claims. It refers to this particular lady. Her name is Capricorn Clark, who claims that she was kidnapped by Diddy, and it's also quite disturbing in what's going on here. So I'll read a little bit from this story for you. But she took on the role of the creative director for Cassie Ventura. Now, this was later on, so she'd been involved. She'd had the usual threats, etc., had gone on in her life. She went back to work there, and she describes it's very interesting how she describes it, because when people are put into a position of against power, absolute power, we can see now why rape victims don't come and report them, because there's a power struggle here. And if they're threatened that if they go to the police, that they would be harmed worse, well, then they're going to stay silent. So this is one of these situations. So she's explaining in some detail how it was that certain things happened, but she left, came back, and was threatened, etc. So in 2011, Clark said to Cassie Ventura that Cassie told her that she was now in a relationship with Scott Mascudi, who is Kid Cudi, the person you saw in that photograph. He was very concerned that Sean Combs, finding out about this relationship, the way Cassie was moving, she was going to get us all killed, said Capricorn. At the time, the phones, car, and rent for Miss Clark and Miss Ventura were paid for by Combs companies. So she said she took Miss Ventura to a US electronics store to buy a burner phone that Combs would not have access to. And in the early morning of December 22, 2011, Clark said she woke to Combs banging on a door with a gun in his hand. "Why didn't you tell me?" she alleged Combs said. Clark said she initially tried to minimize Mascudi's relationship with Ventura, but Combs was furious. "Get dressed. We are going to kill this N-word, he allegedly said. Clark said she tried to refuse, but Combs said, I don't give an F what you want to do. She then said she was kidnapped. Clark then drove to Mascuti's house, but wasn't home. Combs was in the property. She called Ventura on her burner phone. Combs said she said and was livid. So Kid Cootie called the police. Clark then alleged Combs said it was up to her and Miss Ventura to persuade the rapper not to tell the cops about Combs. If you guys don't convince them, I will kill all you mother mm-ms. Clark then said that she saw Combs repeatedly kick Ventura on a road as Combs' security looked on. She called everyone from other staff to Ventura's mum. He's beating the out of your daughter. She said she told Regina Ventura, I'm in out of my head. Asked by a defense lawyer why she didn't call the police, Clark said, the mission on the day was not to get Cootie to call the police. So for me to call them would have been counterintuitive. And I think that's a really important detail there.
Yeah.
So,
Look, if anyone watching this show, whoever had thoughts that being a celebrity, a famous music artist or a movie star is all glitz and glamour and going out shopping for fast cars and Gucci bags, this case and others that haven't come to light yet with movie stars that I know about personally, and will probably never come to light. Let me just tell you, that's not the world in which they live. They live in a world where essentially they're surrounded by yes people. No one ever says no to them, right? Because they're too valuable an asset as a celebrity, or perhaps they're an asset for a 3-letter agency. And it's absolutely appalling spending time around these people. These people will cry if you give them the wrong color M&Ms. They will have you fired. They will make threats. It is a horrible situation. And this Diddy trial is proving that human beings don't have any value. These people write songs and perform songs and play roles in movies and television shows that are so empathetic, that make you love them so much because they've been written by professional writers. But in real life, these people are awful. You wouldn't want to be them and you wouldn't want to spend time with them. Anyone who behaves like that, Jason, is a miserable SOB.
Years ago, I'm a uni student. I'm working in a video shop and absolutely loved it. And it was in the suburb of Randwick, and we knew everyone. We had local racing identities, sports stars, movies, actors, etc. Everyone came to this shop, and there was one particular fellow that we were talking about one day. And we're all young kids, early 20s, uni students, etc. And I'll never forget his advice. No, and he said to me, "Value your anonymity." Yes. That's what he said, and then he walked out of the shop, and it stuck with me for 30 years. He's exactly right, and here we are in front of the camera. But that's the point, isn't it? That there is something in not being known when everyone at that age wants to be famous and rich, and it's not the case.
No, I left the UK having become, in the 90s, having become very famous in Australia and very famous in the UK. And I was asked to go to America to support my ex-husband's acting career, to go to California. And I've got to say, when I first got there, and I had a young baby with me, when I first got there, the fact that no one had a clue who I was a joy. Most people go to California and LA and Hollywood to be famous, but for me, not being famous there was amazing. And you spoke before about going to other territories and instantly getting weird illnesses. I had an 8-month-old baby daughter at that time, my first child. And 2 weeks after we arrived in California, she had foot and mouth disease. And when the doctor told me in the ER, I nearly collapsed. It's not quite as dramatic in humans as it is in animals. Obviously, when animals get it, it's a big drama. But I couldn't believe it, a course of antibiotics, and it cleared it up in her. But yeah, you've got to make sure that you take care of yourself when you get to other territories. But yeah, anonymity is a very, very important thing, right? Because also these people fall from a great height. Look at Diddy, he's falling from a great height. The reason they act sort of like the Freemasons and keep each other's secrets is because there's a lot of Hollywood and movie stars in Hollywood who I know about personally, who've got so much ugly stuff coming down the pipe that the height that they would fall from would be so massive. They're the people right now who are keeping their heads down, staying quiet. All of these people that most of us were indoctrinated to think are heroes, did any of them step out and come out during this time in history to speak out for people or try and protect people? There were sort of coded efforts to protect you. Woody Harrelson was one of them. I'm sure we all saw those clips of Woody Harrelson. He did a Saturday Night Live about it, like, oh, big pharma companies, don't have your best interests at heart, trying to give people messages. But for most of them that we've loved over the years and funded their life by going to the movies, they did nothing, Jason, nothing.
Yeah, well said. Last night I had a really interesting conversation with a fellow who was booking bands for a local big venue on the Central Coast, and just some of the stories that he shared in a very short period of time, most of them just fond and fun, but the shenanigans that they got up with back in the 80s and 90s, big Australian bands, but also the silly things, and they call them a rider, things that were required, like 24 Snicker bars and the room to be painted green, all the green, for a particular star, and it was just those simple things that even then it was a big deal, but they all had different things, or even the pokey addictions of certain stars that would insist on being paid in the early afternoon, and then drop it into the poker machine and then go and play at night. Big name people. It's just extraordinary. And then I'm reminded of R. Kelly and his conviction a couple of years ago. He's been put away for 30 years for similar crimes that Diddy's been accused of. So it's not without precedent. It just extraordinary times. The truth shall set us free, Nicola. It never has looked more obvious than that is the case. It's just that the truth is ugly. And the idea that someone has it easier or better than you, because what it appears like is not necessarily the case. So whether this is the Great Awakening or the Great Cleansing or all of the above, but we work towards building a better society through revealing the truth. And just at this moment, 2/3 of the way through our 100th show, I couldn't be more prouder of the fact that we are doing this work. It is service to community, but more than that, and it will only grow from strength to strength. And I appreciate the support and the comments that people continue to provide. The one thing I will do right now, though, is I'm going to put up the banner for our email address for story ideas, and we really appreciate what you've got to say. It doesn't mean you have to provide all the evidence, information and resources, but if you have that, we appreciate it. But if you have something that you would like us to look into, or people that you would like us to interview on the show, or do detail, whatever, we don't really mind. We just want to hear from you, and that's part of it. Any news show requires input from its audience, and that can only make it better. Nicola?
Yes. And we do get some emails and I do read them, and thank you for that input. And often you send links and stuff for Jason to look at. Lots of people who email us at the Daily Australian are challenging you, Jason. They don't seem to challenge me quite as much, but they all are all on the same page. They're very glad that we're here. And, it is true that all lies lead to the truth. And I think it's been a bit of a jolt. I think the last few years have been a bit of a jolt for us, because lots of things that we thought were set in stone in our civilizations, we actually learn were quite liquid, that actually they can be taken down like liquid very, very quickly. And lots of them we don't want taken down. And I think possibly bodily autonomy and law and order, for me, would be at the top of there, because we're failing on both of those. And I think it's a shame, because I'll tell you now, if this push for these injections hadn't happened and the Australian government had come out and said, oh, we're going to do this digital ID thing on your phone and you can have your banking and your license and it's also convenient. If they'd done that before the injections, I've got to betray, I may have jumped on board with it. I may have thought, hey, this is cool. This is going to work. But because they did it the other way around, because people were harmed, because people had their choices removed, it has now made me suspicious about everything else they're presenting. So I don't know how they're going to get their, what's the word for it, Jason? How are they going to get respect back for themselves as authorities, as institutions? I can only see it happening when there's a mass clear out. I think those top two parties, the Labour and the Liberals in Australia, are going to have to disappear, or at least a lot of people that are in them currently are going to have to disappear. I mean, this lay woman who's the new leader of the Liberals has come in and straight away jumped on board with all these globalist agendas. You don't have to be a massive journalist or a citizen journalist or even just a remote researcher to be able to go online and understand that this climate hoax isn't real. It's simply not real. So when you see someone who's in authority repeat the lie, it's very disappointing.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's this idea of hunting in packs and realizing or thinking where the strength lies, and the idea that you don't want to be part of the outlier. So there was a meeting between RFK Jr. and Javier Milei of Argentina as the little group that's opposing the WHO. They want to build their own organization. And it's just the two men in a room with their support staff. But from little things, big things grow. And could you imagine the day when the world has to face the fact that COVID came from a lab and that all these people supported the cover-up? That will twist very quickly. People will run as fast as they can away from the WHO, and there will be something that has already been set up that is the genuine alternative, the one that stood up, as Bobby Kennedy did today, and said that they're removing the COVID vaccine from the schedule for healthy kids and healthy pregnant women. So that is a big deal. Now,
well, I'll tell you what's weird, Jason, is for the longest time, our governments fell in lockstep. We know that's a term that they like, with whatever the CDC and the FDA said, right? So we were sort of siding with America. We were told very much that's where it came from. But now that America has left the World Health Organization, we're not following America anymore. So that betrays very suspiciously that this was a Democrat/deep state effort and not an American allegiance, which concerns me a little bit.
Isn't it interesting, therefore? So it is a group as opposed to the institution of the office of the United States president.
Yes.
That's the separation there. So now you know that there has to be some form of actual deep state. Well, one of the big policies of the Trump administration was, of course, border security. I've got a couple of short clips here I want to share with you. This is the first one on the developments today in border crossings. I don't know if you're going to believe it, but it's true. Take a look.
The border is closed, and it's kind of remarkable to think about. If any president had accomplished what President Trump has accomplished at the border, you could just sort of go home. Of course, that's not the case with President Trump. He's still working. This is what the chief patrol agent in the San Diego sector wrote. Due to the unprecedented decrease in illegal crossings this year, the massive 1,000-person San Diego sector soft-sided facility has been dismantled. In 2025, San Diego sector arrested 1,199 illegal aliens with an average of 38 per day. This was a 186% drop compared to March of 2024.
How great is that when you see the video of them shutting down the facility where it used to be packed with migrants under Joe Biden, and now under Donald Trump, only 38 a day. So his efforts are working from day one. And ICE is still doing the work, Lawrence. They're still arresting people over the Memorial Day weekend.
You know, I think it was probably one of his famous lines in one of the speeches that he gave. He goes, "We didn't need new legislation. We just needed a new president." And it's true, because there's no new laws concerning the border that's been passed. It's just the president and his administration enforcing the law.
Yeah, he's absolutely right about that. Joe Biden committed treason, or potentially whoever was in control of the auto pen was committing treason against that nation, because there was no law stating that he could open the border, and yet he opened it. Someone sent me some information today. I don't know if it's true, but apparently some evidence is emerging that Hunter Biden had access to stamp things with that auto pen. If you're telling me someone of that lower character who was, very financially motivated, that we do know because he was peddling his family name for various business endeavors. If you're telling me that that's the person that was really running the country, we need a full-scale investigation into that.
Oh, this is it. And it is taking place. There is an investigation underway. Now, in terms of said border crossings, well, now we're going to get some more news about what's actually happening here. So if you consider that you can't just let anyone in, and we saw that video yesterday of that Turkish fellow explaining the type of people, and he was one of them that had paid $10,000 to a criminal cartel to get passaged into the US. Now let's look at the other side of the coin. These people have paid this money one way or another. This is what's happening.
When you look at the people that they've arrested just over Memorial Day weekend, I mean, these are people that just been roaming the country. You got an 18-year-old Guatemalan citizen that's suspected to be a part of the 18th Street gang. You got an El Salvadorian that was charged with 4 counts of felony sexual assault.
On a child.
On a child. Can you believe that? And so you got a 35-year-old in Mexico, a criminal conviction for aggravated assault, and he had a deadly weapon as well. You got another Mexican citizen that was accused of sexual assault. The victim was a minor as well, 13 years old.
Yeah, then we have another one, a 26-year-old citizen from Mexico, Charlie, felony rape conviction, and another one, a 35-year-old citizen of Mexico convicted of distributing meth.
Yeah, so not only are we keeping these people out of our country and having a border, which we're allowed to have, but also think about, it's a humanitarian crisis when you have tens of thousands, millions of these people coming across the border. It's very dangerous. You wind up in tent facilities like this. The Biden administration created a human catastrophe at the border, and President Trump, as you said, without any legislation, solved that problem and fixed it for all of us.
There it is. I mean, bad people are bad people and are being arrested and shouldn't be in the country in the first place. Now, Nicola, meanwhile, what would you think the Democrats would be doing at this point in time when it's obvious that the wrong people are being let in? Well, they traveled to El Salvador to virtue signal. Have a look at this one.
I'm the congressman that represents Tomar. I came all the way down from the United States after we'd contacted their ambassador, after we'd made formal requests to our ambassador to the El Salvadoran government. And we came here to visit him today. And now they're telling us we got to go all the way back to El Salvador, to San Salvador to get a permit. That's ridiculous. We ought to have a chance to come in and visit. They knew we were coming. They knew why we were coming. And they know we have the right to do this. So they need to just cut the crap, let us get in there and have a chance to see him and talk with him. We got his lawyer here. We got somebody from the unions here to talk with him. Let us in. Stop playing games. Let us have a chance to talk with him.
I just find that extraordinary. I mean, yeah, you're talking about an individual and you want to be a humanist, etc. But this is a person who was deemed to be illegal, has been sent to El Salvador, and this is where you spend your resources when there are millions of constituents, or at least in your own district, that you should be looking after. But this is what they tend to do. So we are at odds here with the political spectrum, those that are representing.
What they're doing is they're taking their most vicious, terrifying criminals, including those that attack children, and people for whom extreme violence is second nature, and they're just going, yep, go to America. You're done here, go to America. Imagine, let me tell you, it's not exactly a party in Australian jails. You've got multiple chopper reads floating around. If you don't know who that is, go watch the documentary. Imagine if we just decided, take them all out and send them to New Zealand, or send them to Japan, or send them to England. That's what's happening. That's the equivalent of what's happening now. For me, that is a soft attack on a nation. As Trump said, and it's an absolute fact, they're not sending their best and brightest. When I came to Australia, you had to prove with documents on paper that you were the best and brightest, that you had prospects, that you had work contracts. I had to provide a television work contract. And it's just not like that anymore. They're letting people in who are, we know in Melbourne, in Victoria, running around with machetes. They don't care who they hurt. They don't care that it's your granddad or your auntie or your niece or your nephew or your son or your daughter. They don't care. They don't discern. They weren't raised in a civilized society. Clearly, that isn't an insult to anyone coming from a particular place. You can see it. There are some new Australians that are coming here And all they want to do is get an ABN number, start a business, and improve their economic situation. And you know what? I have respect for those people. They're willing to do a lot of jobs, right? Delivery jobs, gardening jobs, working in shops, retail, all that stuff. But you've also got people coming in from countries into Australia who are just here to commit crime. We're just a mark for them. We're just the people who've got the money. We're just the people who have the homes with not enough security, and they'll break in and they'll terrify you. You know, I know an autistic boy who got terrified by 6 guys breaking in, coming over the fence. So, you know, who signed it? You know, there's no auto pen in Australia. We've supposedly got a prime minister. He just supposedly got re-elected. Who has allowed over these last years these kinds of people into Australia? Who ultimately, Jason, is going to take responsibility for it?
This is the great question, isn't it? So we keep fighting along, keep presenting the facts and wondering if we're going to get an uprising of the individuals or the system itself will collapse under its own weight. Now, we're getting into our last few minutes of the show, and we don't often cover it on this. I just wanted to give you some interesting details out of the Russia-Ukraine situation. It's really interesting because what we get, as much as we get, we don't see a lot of action from the war. We get a lot of propaganda. Now, I'm just going to share some different headlines here that I think are quite interesting. So this is Murdoch Press today. Playing with fire, huge escalation in war. Trump has erupted over the war in Ukraine, while 4 nations have confirmed a massive escalation 3 years into the conflict. So we're talking about Germany being involved here. Now, here we go. Let me just show you a little bit more. So this is the Canberra Times. War against democracies next door to Australia. This is the ambassador for Ukraine. Now, he has come out. I've got to read you this information here. He says, Ukraine's ambassador to Australia, Vasyl Mirochenko, I can't pronounce his name properly, apologies for that, publicly extorting Australia for more cash in a bizarre rant in Canberra. Let me tell you, Australia, this war is next door, he says. It's so close you cannot even imagine. Ukraine is asking Australia for more support because if Ukraine fails, he says, Australia will crumble. Most of the countries in the world don't support Ukraine. The Western world has already lost the global south. So there's some statements there. I'm going to play you a short clip from this particular person. This is him on Sky News. It's a very odd excerpt from an interview, but it's worth watching.
More sanctions on Russia, more weapons for Ukraine, long-range missiles, more missiles for air defense, $300 billion, more capabilities to inflict damage to the Russian troops on the ground, using Russian assets
Chancellor
to buy
today,
weapons from Ukraine. It's huge. We've been asking for that for the past 3 years.
It's just an odd exchange. This is what's going on now. So they're quite nervous.
How dare they come here? They just come here to demand money, right? That's what they've done. They've come here to demand money, demand support for their war. Why are we letting this happen? This is the shoddy, shonky leadership we've got in Australia, that we can be held to ransom. And what do you mean Australia won't survive? Who the hell is this person? And how dare he come here and say this to people? I mean, if any of us went on television or on this show and said, if you don't give me money, if you don't do what I say, your country won't survive, we'd be arrested for terrorism.
Oh, exactly.
But it's okay for this guy?
Or some form of incitement because he's the ambassador. Well, meanwhile, Vladimir Putin has made it clear that any misbehavior with drones in Russia will be met with consequences. So for those saying that they don't see any action, let's show you one of these situations right now. So that's Russian.
What that guy is holding is a drone eliminator. A drone eliminator. Okay. Well, I have a drone problem at my house. They come and hover and frighten my dogs. You know, hello, ASIO. Hello, CIA. Yes, this is where I live. It's a very humble home. I won't apologize to that. And I can literally see the drone counting my dogs. It hovers over life because they're all spread out, the dogs, and it hovers and a red light flashes. So I'm envious. We are not so lucky to have drone eliminators in Australia, but I was thinking of designing some kind of catapult system because they come so close that's got a big net on it and I can shoot the net out and grab these drones. I want to know what it says on the drone. Does it say property of the US government, property of the Australian government, or is it Chinese writing? That's what I want to know, Jason.
Yeah, I don't know if they're, well, maybe the drones are, in fact, Chinese. That's really interesting. Well, I just find it extraordinary when we get these headlines. Here's another one for you. This is the Canberra Times. How Australia can help make sure Russia does not succeed in Ukraine. What, by sending another 49 Abrams tanks that haven't quite arrived? Just the strangest things.
Why does Australia suddenly hate Russia? It's so weird.
It is, and this is because we have to play down this so-called globalist line and friends with NATO, etc. Meanwhile, this is a Ukrainian soldier. He wants to defect.
Я, Каракулин Георгий Юрьевич, 12.05.1979, 425 ОШП. Отказываюсь от обмена. Хочу остаться в Российской Федерации до окончания боевых действий с возможностью получения российского гражданства.
Very different to what you're told in the mainstream competing concepts there. I just find it amazing. Now, at the same time, German Chancellor Merz has stated that Berlin no longer limits the range of weapons supplied to Kiev. So they are saying that they can now shoot into Russia. German Vice Chancellor Klingbeil had denied that the German statements about lifting a range of weapons supplied to Ukraine, though, so they're at odds themselves.
This is very worrying, Jason. A few weeks ago, I reported to you there is an AI predicting system called Socrates who said there will be world war in Europe by 2026.
Well, I'm glad that you said it, because I think there's a solution, and I think I'm going to play one more clip. This is Putin himself. This is earlier.
Не мы же организовали госпереворот на Украине, понимаете? То есть все время нам говорили, что надо демократия, выборы. Госпереворот совершили, и все как будто так и надо, кровавый причем. И пошли дальше подавлять там Донбасс и так далее. Людей там уничтожать с вертолетов и самолетов. Просто нелепо. Вынудили нас просто делать то, что мы сейчас делаем. И пытаются сделать нас виноватыми в этом.
So, Putin is saying we're not the ones to blame. This was put to our door, etc. So it was a provocation. And now we've put it out there. And for those that don't quite understand that's where he's at. Here's another graphic that's really important, because we've seen now the separation from Trump and Putin, right? So here's a really interesting set of tweets. So I'm just going to take the bottom crawl off there just so we can read what it says. Stand by. Here we go. So Vladimir Putin doesn't realize that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have happened to Russia. And I mean, really bad. He's playing with fire. And so someone writes, but I thought the left said Trump was owned by Putin. So that's the point, isn't it? Now you can't say that they're in cahoots. However, I believe that all the world is a stage and the sum of all fears. This is meant to make you feel like we are going to go to World War III, and then there will be the great negotiation and all will be peaceful again. This is the whole point. Because
it's
you
cruelty,
have to bring
though.
the people on. It is cruelty, but unfortunately, when you're dealing with Europe and you've got Macron and Starmer and Merz sitting in a room
Ursula von der Leyen,
and trying to work out how they're going to create headlines such as what Australia can do to protect Ukraine, it's all a hoax. So on the contrary, you've got Russia now taking the gloves off against Ukraine. He's going, well, why would we go to a 30-day ceasefire so that they can regroup? So what he's done is he's gone harder rather than softer, get them on the back foot, and then he makes these short-term gains, and then will come to the table at some point, let them escalate, come to the table, and it will be solved. So for mine, I am not worried about it. I'm on the opposite. I know that this will be resolved, and the fact now that Trump and Putin don't look like friends is even more interesting, and they'll come together, and then everyone will go, oh, look, they solved things for the greater good, the greater purpose. Meanwhile, the West are just being spiraling into absolute defeat. But you've got to set up your infrastructure first. You've got to then, it's a game of chess, and you've got to make them use up all their capital, all their ammunition, literally, and this is what they're doing. And these novice leaders like Mayors, he's been chancellor for 5 minutes, Starmer for not much longer, and then you've got Macron, who's hopeless and actually imprisons his opposition. This is what you're up against. Extraordinary times, Nicola. Just extraordinary.
I don't think any countries anywhere should ever engage in rhetoric that is pro-war, never actively supply arms to any war or conflict, or engage in any war without a referendum of the people. Because I find it's almost like a double cross that, you vote people in because you hope that they'll improve the economy, or they'll defend your rights, or, they'll be a better leader for your country. This is the problem with globalization, is we are seeing citizens in nations just circumvented. We're just circumvented. Maybe we don't want all of our arms and all of our taxation going over to a war, particularly with people making threats like that on that interview. I don't appreciate that. So I don't like the way democracy just seems to be a word now and not a practice. I would like to see more of the practice of democracy. And I think the reason that Trump is doing so much for the American people, as much as he can after what's happened, is because it's gratitude. He's grateful that, they gave him another shot to come back in and fix it. What we have in Australia is leaders who are not grateful at all, even though it only takes like 30% to get in Australia because of our weird voting system. They're not grateful, not even to that 30%. What they do straight away is jump on a plane and go overseas and get their international orders. And I think that's traitorous. I think that's treasonous. I think that's a double cross. And I won't give up speaking out until I see that democracy is back in the hands of the people it's supposed to be in. Democracy, by definition, is a majority rule. But because of the voting system in Australia, it's not majority rule, which means what? We don't really have democracy, Jason.
Yeah, well, exactly right. It's extraordinary times again. What do you do? And how do you fight back against it? Or do we have to let it play out?
Fix the system.
Yeah. So, and so many different strategies to do it. Look, we have had a very, very good 100th show. It evolves every time. I hope that you, the viewer, has enjoyed it as much as we have as to bring it to you. And we look forward to the next 100. How about that?
Yeah, I do look forward to the next 100. I wanted people to learn some personal stuff about us today, Jason, and we never got to it. What's your favorite movie, Jason?
Oh, gosh. I tell you what, I have three films I can't go past. Obviously, The Shawshank Redemption, everyone's got that on their list. The Italian film Life is Beautiful with Roberto Benigni, I think, is a modern Charlie Chaplin film. And I think that Steven Spielberg, even though I'm not a fan of him today, his film Schindler's List was a masterpiece. That blew my mind. Big movies. Yeah, what about you?
My two favorite movies, I'm going to show them to you because I'm DVD girl now. I don't do any streaming or anything. If you want to laugh, have a glass of wine and watch this movie called Sideways.
Oh, yes.
It's got Thomas Hayden Church, Paul Giamatti, Virginia Madsen, and first name Samantha Oh, she's amazing in it as well. But yes. Virginia Madsen, the blonde lady in that, I've got a massive girl crush on. There is a side of me that has a girl crush on Virginia Madsen. And the second one is sort of like a fairy tale, a modern day fairy tales, because it's a cautionary tale. And it's actually a very important movie for people to watch. But because it was an important movie for people to watch, they buried it. So this is a movie called The Box, and it has got Cameron Diaz in it. And you really need to watch this movie because the message in it is that for someone else to benefit greatly, another person has to lose and miss out. It's a bit creepy. There's a very strangely deformed gentleman in the movie. So if you're creeped out by that, it's not for you. And Cameron Diaz puts in an absolutely amazing performance. Now, what's your favorite alcoholic drink, Jason?
I tell you what, I have a couple of bottles of whiskey on the shelf, and after all the different beers I have tried, gone through all the craft beer stuff, I'm back to the basics. And if I can find a Resch's on tap in a pub, that is my beer of choice. How about that?
Oh,
How about you?
no. Oh, I'm very predictable. It's champagne lifestyle for me, but I can't afford champagne. I can't. I have to buy the cheap knockoff fizzy wine, and my kids just call it the fizz. Mum's on the fizz.
Oh, that's hysterical. Isn't it great though? But isn't it funny though that you have your favorites? Like when you're younger, you want to try everything, and then and you come back to, like, today we will only go to, I think, 3 or 4 restaurants. We used to go when we were younger. We'd go to everything. Now we very it's not so much strict, but we just know what we like. And know what we don't like too. And I think that's part of it, that as you mature, you realize what you do as much as what you don't like, and that determines how you live your life.
Well, I don't like change. So I like things to stay the same. So if you're in Melbourne, in Victoria, and you want to go to my favorite restaurant, and they wouldn't know I'm saying this, but I've said it for 30 years in the press. My favorite restaurant is Romeo's in Toorak. It sounds fancy because it's in Toorak, but it's not. It's an Italian restaurant. What's your favorite restaurant, Jason? Give them a plug.
Wow. I have many, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to give a special mention to my friend Sandeep over at Morpeth Pizza. It is an Indian restaurant and a pizza restaurant in one.
Oh, wow.
He is the biggest cricket fan in Maitland outside of myself. And we will stand there and chat about it for half an hour at a time. It's not that he never forgets his customers, but he makes special time to make me feel welcome and my family welcome. And the food there is absolutely amazing. So if you come to Maitland, please go to the historic town of Morpeth and check out Morpeth Pizza. You will be treated like the king that you are and the queen that you are.
Oh my God. As a Brit, the idea of dipping my Hawaiian pizza into my chicken tikka masala is it just pings all the right buttons for me. So I can see why that would work. Jason, thank you so much for our 100th show. I will say it again. I really appreciate you. I know you probably work off screen a bit harder than I do because you're all up on the facts. So I do appreciate everything that you've done for us.
Well, thank you, Nicola, and likewise. Look, to bring us together, which was your idea. We have had a little bit of history in the past, and we did some great interviews over the Christmas New Year period that we thought was breaking new ground, and it kind of just made sense at the time that we would embark on 2025, a year of hope and promise to create something new in the independent media space. And I hope that this is just the spark that creates, I hope, new ideas, high quality, real challenges to the mainstream narrative, so that when the people realize that they've been hoodwinked, we have an infrastructure in place of trusted sources of information with likable people. I hope we're likable, but also willing to challenge and to keep cool in a crisis, to get cranky when we get cranky, but to be real. And I think it's the real part of it that most people are looking for, because we've been faked for so long. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being a fantastic audience. It's been tough for me as well to watch the, I didn't realize it at first, but the massive decline of the establishment media. For a start, they all have that news voice in Australia, and you just know it's propaganda when they talk to you. And you just think, my goodness, there's nothing of the person in the reports. And I think we bring a lovely personal element. I know you guys appreciate that, and we appreciate you. So thank you so much for supporting us and watching The Daily Australian with myself, Nicola Charles, my co-host, co-producer, co-owner, Jason Olbourne, Mr. News himself. We will do this all over again for 101 tomorrow.